We record the video so that if anytime you guys want to go back, you can always go back and look at the videos for any of the classes, my videos, and anybody else's videos as well on our YouTube channel. So welcome, Miranda, and we are going to go ahead and I just introduced myself real quickly, but I'll do it again. My name is Leslie. I am in Michigan. I'm a graduation alliance teacher. I'm going into my 4th year here, but 10th year teaching English, and so we are going to get started. So the first thing we want to talk about is the essential questions. So what are we actually looking at today? The first thing we're going to look at is the 6 text structures, like what are they, and then how are they able to be identified. The next thing is what makes a source credible, and then we'll look at 271, which is that solution paragraph, and talk specifically about how it should be formatted and written. So going down to our text structures, we're going to look at a little Prezi here, because I think it's a little bit more interesting than just my slideshow, about what text structures are and what they look like. So the first thing we want to talk about is that a text structure is how the information is organized. There are 6 patterns that we're going to talk about. When you look at your Prezi in the actual unit in the class, they'll kind of go over the same 6 text structures, which are chronological, cause and effect, compare and contrast, problem and solution, and then sequence, process, or spatial and descriptive. So chronological is the first one, and that just means that the information is organized with the timeline order. So the example they give you is the Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water, and it's a story. So it's giving you the order something happens, like a timeline. Most stories, it says here all stories are told chronologically. That's not true. Some stories are told kind of like back and forth, jumping all over the place, but most stories are told chronologically. So that is one way to determine if it's chronological, is if you're looking at something, it's giving you like the order something happens. The next one is cause and effect. Cause and effect is when an action and its results are explained. Excuse me. So the cause might be something like students did not learn the material, and the effect is that they performed poorly on the test. You don't want to confuse this with chronological, because this won't really have a beginning, middle, and end. It won't have like the plot necessarily that a chronological story does. Time doesn't really progress very much. It's really just giving you, this is the cause, and because of that thing, this is the effect. The next one is compare and contrast. This tells you how 2 things are similar and how they're different. So if we were comparing apples and oranges, you can look at what's alike about them and what's different about them. And these hopefully will be pretty straightforward, because they're pretty like, this is what's like, this is what's different. Problem and solution is when they give you a problem and then they suggest an answer. So if a problem is that property is being spray painted, the solution might be require a license to buy spray paint. You don't want to confuse this with cause and effect, because this is where it's like specifically presented as an issue or a problem. Instead of just saying, this is what's causing this is a problem, how do we fix it? Sequence or process writing is where you're going to look at information step by step. It's going to explain to you how to do something or how something happens. It's not the same as chronological, which is usually a story. The sequence or process writing is usually in nonfiction. It usually gives you how to do something. It does not have to occur at a specific time. It can be like just any kind of, this is how this order happens. Spatial and descriptive writing is describing something in the order of its space, which is kind of a weird phrase. But it's really just telling you, like, how does something look? This does not have any time passing in these passages. So if you're reading about somebody's bedroom and it says there are 2 windows on the west wall, a television across from the bed, a bed in the middle, and a closet by the TV, there's no time passing there. They're just purely describing something. And where it says descriptive is kind of like a good little clue there. It's just a description. So when you're trying to identify, there are a few tips that you want to look at for yourself. So the first thing is ask, what is the author doing in this paragraph? In your own head, you want to put it in your own words. So like think in your own words, a short summary, like what is the purpose? What is this person doing? What are they trying to say? You can look at the graphic organizers to see if they fit, and then look for the signal words, which we will talk about later, because there's a few signal words for each type of text structure that will hopefully help you identify when you're looking at your assignments. So we're going to read some of these passages. I'll read them out to you guys, and then we can decide if we can figure out like which text structure we think it might be. I know that you might not have the list in front of you, so if you can't remember what they all are, that's totally fine, but we'll give it a shot and see what we can do. If you want to write them down, on like a piece of paper, something next to you can to kind of quiz yourself and see how well you know them. Excuse me. And if not, that's totally fine, because obviously this is not a quiz. The first one, popular sports. Football and baseball are two of the most popular sports in the country. They have many things in common. For one, they are both team sports, and they both require players to advance to an end or home point on the playing field. However, football requires players to carry the ball to the end zone, whereas in baseball, it is the defending team that controls the ball while it is in play. So, anybody have an idea of what this might be? You could just type in the text box if you want to, of what text structure that would be. All right, I don't see anybody's popping up there yet, and that's fine. This is comparing and contrast. So it's comparing football and baseball as two different sports. Oh yeah, wait, someone said cause and effect. Close. It's the one with the two different phrases like that. Thank you for the effort. I always don't want to be hanging out here by myself. Thanks, Miranda. Yeah, so it's comparing and contrasting. You're looking at those two different sports and how are they the same, but also how are they different. The next one says the magic blanket. One day while walking home from school, he found a magic blanket. When he covered himself with it, he turned invisible. At first, he used his power to play all kinds of tricks on people. He'd turn invisible and hide things or move a cup when someone was pouring juice to make a mess. He had a lot of fun. But then one day he found he couldn't take the blanket off. He was just stuck invisible. He quit playing tricks on people, hoping that he'd be able to take the blanket off and rejoin society, but it didn't work. He is still invisible somewhere right now, and he is very lonely. So anybody have a guess about which one this might be? Good, chronological, yeah. This one is telling you a story. It's just telling you the order something happens in. Perfect, good job. Okay, studying for a test. So believe it or not, as important as it is, many students do not know how to study for a test. Well, studying for a test is easy. The first thing that you do is take out your notes, open your notes up to the section that you are supposed to review. Read what you wrote in your notebook. When you are done, close your notebook and see if you remember the ideas that you were studying. Still don't remember? Open your notebook again. Or no, open your notebook back up and try again. Good, this one is sequence. So sequence or process. It's giving you like a specific order of how to do something. Because they're on fire. So the next one, low test scores. Many students have been getting low test scores on tests, and this is upsetting to parents, teachers, and students. Low test scores show that teachers aren't teaching effectively or that students aren't learning. Either way, it's an issue with which we are concerned. I propose the following. Any teacher who's giving a test should open up their classroom for study groups the night and morning before the test. Maybe by giving students extra opportunities to study, we can improve students' test scores. Very good. You guys are like super fast tonight. I like it. This is problem and solutions. Giving you a problem, low test scores, and this is a possible solution. The gym room. The gym room at the high school down the street from me is huge. Along the north and south walls are bleachers that fold up during gym. Coach pulls the bleachers out for big games. At the end of the east and west walls are basketball hoops. The ceilings are very high, and at the top of the gym are many large windows. The windows go all the way around the gym. There are also ropes that are either tucked away or hanging from the ceiling in the middle of the gym. The ropes intimidate some students. That gym is my favorite place. And I see descriptive already over here from Miranda. And yes, that is correct. So this is just describing, and hopefully this is a good example for you guys to see what it looks like when someone's just describing something and there's like no passage of time. There's nothing happening in the story. It's just a description. All right. The last one I think is eligibility. Being involved in after-school sports and clubs is not a right, it's a privilege. Therefore, students have to meet eligibility requirements. If students have any D's or F's, they are not allowed to play. Also, if students have behavior issues in class, they cannot be on the team or in the club. Lastly, students need to keep good attendance. If students miss school, they most certainly cannot come to practice. Being on a team is a lot of responsibility. If students are not proven to be responsible, they will not be permitted in clubs and teams. And I see cause and effect with a question mark, but you're right, it is cause and effect. It's trying to give you, this is the thing that is causing this other thing, which is that, if students are not doing well, then they cannot participate in sports. So good job. Okay, so the answers are right there, but we've already talked about them. So looking at signal words for each of these types. So chronological, they're giving you like first, second, third, before, it's the date type of things. It's giving you the order something happens. Compare and contrast is where you're looking at words that would compare something like, unlike, in contrast, also, different from, same as, those types of things. Cause and effect, therefore, so, as a result, because of, so these are like saying, because this thing happened, this other thing also happened. For problem solution, you got like the question is, the dilemma is, to solve this. So you're looking at like, these are kind of introducing problems. Description, such as, for example, for instance, you're trying to look for words that are very descriptive. And then for sequence or process writing, first, second, next, then, anything that's giving you the order something happened in. Okay, we're gonna hop back over here. So that is, that's not everything for text structure. So when you're looking at assignment 1.62, you want to look for signal words, which you just looked at in that little thing. And I think that there might be signal words in the assignment itself also. You want to summarize it in your own words, and you can do that in your head to try and think of like, what is the purpose of this writing? What is the author trying to do? And then in the actual assignment 162, you have to go through and they give you little blurbs to read, and you decide what are those blurbs, like what type of text structure those are. So hopefully that's pretty easy, straightforward as far as understanding how to do the assignment. But if you're getting stuck on the text structures, maybe go through and watch that little blurb again, or there is a Prezi, I think, also in, you know what, this PowerPoint itself is not in the website, although it's on, this is the link to that Prezi, so you could always type out all those letters if you want to. But I'd be more than happy to send you that Prezi. So if you want to send me a message, Miranda, through like the chat or email, I'm more than happy to email you the link to that Prezi so that you can go through and really like just copy paste whatever you want to or anything like that. So that'd be no problem. Actually, I wonder if I can, let me see. There you go. Hopefully, if that doesn't work, let me know, because you can always send me a message and I'll be happy to get to you that way too, okay? Does that work better? Cool. All right, so we are like part of the way through at least. We have 2 more little things we're gonna look at. But does anybody have any questions about what we just looked at? Or even about anything else with English? We'll have time at the end too if you have something that you're thinking about that you are not sure it's going to be answered yet. I wish I knew the meaning of life, Miranda, because I might have like, you know, some wildly successful book deal or something. All right, if I see anything else pop up in chat, I will stop and go back to it. So don't feel like you have to wait. Also, my contact info is right here too. So if you don't have my email yet, it's right there. And my name is right here. So if you want to chat me anything later, on the messaging system, that's always a good way to get a hold of me too. I'll mention this right now while I'm waiting and see if anybody has questions. I don't always see chat until the evening because right now it's summertime, so I'm on my computer more often. But during the year, I do teach middle school during the day. So if I am teaching, I'm not going to be able to get to my chat. But if you email me, I might, like during my lunch break or something, I might be able to send back a quick message if you are, you know, if it's something I know off the top of my head. So email might be easier to get a hold of me during the day if it's something you need right away. All right, no questions. We'll just go ahead and continue on. So looking at credible sources, which is 211, we are going to go through and look at this Prezi. And this Prezi is actually in your, oops, sorry, it's not at the beginning of the Prezi. Make it harder. This is actually in your assignments when you're looking at your lessons. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I wanted to go through it because I think a lot of times when you're looking at Prezis yourself, there's a ton of words and information, but it might not always make complete sense. I'm hoping that we can go through it and make a little bit more sense. So starting out with finding credible sources, the word credible just means to be able to be believed. So how do we look at something and decide, does this source actually fulfill what we need it to be, to use in one of our assignments? So you are going to use the CRAP acronym, which I know is kind of funny, crap acronym, but it's good because it has everything we need. So currency, reliability, authority, purpose, or point of view. The first one is currency. So currency is really just dealing with like, how old is this website or book that you're using? Is the information current? And it doesn't matter because something that's about like World War II doesn't necessarily have to be as current as something about like a flu outbreak that's happening right now. So the information that the topic that you're using is going to demand different currency, depending on what it is. The next thing is reliability. So what kind of information is included in your resource? Is it reliable? Is it primary sources? Is it balanced? Is it really biased? Just like, are there actual sources from an expert in the data that you're using? The next thing is authority. So who is the author or creator, and then what are their credentials? Are they reputable? Are there a lot of advertisements? What is the intent of the person who's publishing this information? Are they trying to sell you something, or are they actually trying to just give you information that's not biased? The next one is purpose or point of view. So is this fact or opinion? Like, does somebody just come up with this idea off the top of their head, or is this based in fact? Is it biased? Is it just giving you one side of the argument? And are they trying to sell you something? Because if they're trying to sell you something, it's probably kind of skewed toward whatever they are trying to sell you. So this is a bad source example. Well, sorry guys, let me make this a little smaller so we can see it. Based on evidence collected by my roommate, jackalopes are hybrid jackrabbits crossed with pheasants and antelopes. Native only to South Dakota, they are known for pranking hunters, which is not very authoritative there. So supporting arguments with sources, you want to make sure that the information you're using for your sources are solid, that you're using good things when you're looking at websites. So audience and credibility. If your audience is looking at your argument and the sources that you're using are not credible, they might not think that your argument itself is credible. Even if your argument is locked down and it's awesome and normally nobody would argue with it, if I'm reading an article or a paper written by you and I see that your sources are really not credible, then I might assume that your argument is also not credible, even though it might be. The other thing is trustworthiness of yourself. So if you're using information from questionable sources, the audience maybe then thinks maybe the author's not trustworthy themselves. So even if you are a really trustworthy person and what you're saying is really true, when you're using sources that are not good, it makes people question whether or not they can trust you. And when you're writing an argument essay or paper of any kind, you want to make sure people trust you and that they're on your side. So where can information be sourced for a credible argument? Websites are useful for finding information, but how do you decide which sites to use? For research, it's best to have an edu, gov, or mil, ending in the URL. This is showing you all the different URLs that you find generally, like the most common ones. .com is commercial, which means that someone's trying to make money. .org is really any organization. And then .net is there's no specific designation. So those are not necessarily bad. I'm not saying that you could never find a .org that's a helpful thing. But when you're looking at .edu, which is education, .gov, which is government, and .mil, which is military, those are generally fairly trustworthy sites. So that's like the first test that you want to, try to pass the website by. When you're looking at it, does it have a good URL? Most credible, like I said, government websites, peer-reviewed journals, those are generally more reputable. And the less credible would be like blogs, websites, web forums, individual sites. Things that anybody could go on and post are less credible generally because they aren't reviewed by anybody to make sure that they're actually accurate. So looking at the CRAP acronym here, this site right here is updated in 1996. If you're looking at influenza activity, 1996 is too old, right? You want to make sure that it's way more current than that. Wikipedia is one that always trips people up. Not always, some people. Because Wikipedia has a ton of information, and there are a lot of reputable sources at the bottoms of Wikipedia pages sometimes that you might want to use. So if you're looking at Wikipedia, I'm not saying you should never look at the site, but when you're trying to write an argument essay, you want to really use reputable sites. So I would go to the bottom of Wikipedia and see if there are reputable sites sourced there, because those are good places to jump off of. And then you can use those actual sites to, start looking at research instead of just using Wikipedia. Because authority is a problem in Wikipedia. And we're not going to watch this little video about Stephen Colbert, which we're not going to watch, but, you can always look it up if you want to. You can use sites authored by experts in the field of research or authored by researchers who have extensive experience on a subject. So you want something that somebody who's knowing what they're talking about is writing, not just your neighbor. Unless your neighbor happens to know what they're talking about and they're like some kind of expert in a field. So looking at this website here, it's the NRA News. Someone might say, I believe everything this site says because it's written by the NRA. They know everything about guns. Now, this site is really pro-militia, and it's a very anti-gun control. Biased sites are not necessarily bad, so you don't have to say you can never use a site like this. But it's important to inform the reader that you are using a site that is biased, so that they are aware that what they're reading does have a biased edge to it. Lots of sites have biases to them. Bias is not necessarily bad, so don't always think that that means you absolutely can't use it. You just want to be careful that you are aware of the fact that that site has that kind of filter on it. All right, so popular things are written for general audience. They provide overview. They're short. They don't often cite sources. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't. They're a little bit more shallow. Whereas scholarly things are written by professionals or for professionals. They're really detailed and in-depth. Google Scholar is a really good place to go to start researching things, to search from there to find different scholarly articles or journals. And then we're gonna stop there. This, like I said, is in your actual unit. So if you are going through and looking at 211, you will see this in lesson 2.1, I think, is where that Prezi is. So you want to make sure before you start doing 211 that you understand what CRAP stands for and what it means. You want to understand what makes a website credible. You want to understand what the credible URLs are, which are all things we just talked about. You're more than welcome to go back and look at that. Or when you get the YouTube link to this, you can always go back and watch that little blurb again. Okay, so moving on to the solution paragraph, which is 271. For 271, you're going to use sources you already found in 261, which is your works cited assignment. You're going to look at those credible sources, make sure they're credible. If you didn't do that before, and you've already done this assignment, go back and make sure that they are actually credible. You're going to find a short quote that you want to use. This is just a short little blurb because I know that I've seen some people doing it. Make sure you don't want to use a quote that's an actual paragraph by itself. You want to find something that will fit inside of a sentence of your own. Citations, I wrote here, put quotes around the words you use from the source because sometimes that doesn't always happen. I noticed in the example that I'm going to show you in a second, there's not always quotes around all the words. So unless you're paraphrasing, which maybe this person was, you want to make sure that you put quotes around words that are actually quoted. And this Prezi is really short, so I'm sorry there's been like 3 Prezis in a row, but this is a short one. So I just want to kind of, oops, this is another one. I didn't start off from the beginning. Sorry, guys. I just think it's a little bit more interesting than just listening to me tell you about it. So MLA in-text citations are what you're focusing on. If you need more information about in-text citations, Purdue OWL is a really helpful place, and I'm going to type that in the chat bar here, and I have the last 2 lessons I've done, I've talked about Purdue OWL. So if you are looking for lessons about Purdue OWL, you can always go and look up the other stuff that I've done lesson-wise. I didn't want to spend more time on it today because I've talked about it a lot. But it's a good website to go and look up anything about MLA format that you have questions about. So in-text citations, you want to put the author's last name either in an introductory or signal phrase or in parentheses at the end of the sentence. And this is for websites. If you're looking at a book, you're going to also need to put the page number. But I have almost 0 people that use books. I can absolutely, let me do that right now. Pull this link for you too, so you can. There you go. That way you can grab it. If anybody's watching this video back and is interested in the links to these videos, because you're not in the chat box right now, just feel free to send me a message and I'd be happy to find them for you. Okay, so moving on. This is the first example of a direct quote with the author's name in a signal phrase. So up here, this little part with the orange underline is giving you the actual quote from the website. And the underlined part is what we're going to use in our quote. So the example is, according to Mrs. McNally, the recommended method of citing a source in MLA style is to begin the sentence by using the author's name in a signal phrase to introduce the material. The part in yellow is the part that's quoted. That's why there are quote marks around it. Excuse me. But the author's name is up here, so you don't have to put it in parentheses at the end. So as long as you include the author's name up here, that's totally fine. You don't have to put anything else after. Now, this is when you don't have the author's name mentioned in a signal phrase. So you would have the recommended method of citing a source in my text is to begin the sentence by using the author's name in a signal phrase to introduce the material. And then you put the author's last name here. There's no signal phrase, so you have to have the author's last name in parentheses. Notice it's after the quote, but before the end mark. So you're going to put the end mark after parentheses, or after the parentheses, I apologize. In-text citations of source material have to be listed in your works cited page also at the very end of your paper. If you don't have an author's last name, and we'll talk about that in a second, you're going to use whatever is the first thing listed on your works cited page entry is what you're going to use for your citation. So, yeah, that's it. Clicking back over here. This is what the template for 271 looks like. It has 9 sentences included. I want to make sure that everybody is aware of that. The biggest thing I notice when people, the 2 biggest issues that I get when people turn this assignment in that they get points knocked off for is that either A, they forgot to use in-text citations, or B, they didn't write all 9 sentences. Because sometimes people will decide like, oh, I'm just going to do the first set with a concrete detail and commentary and then just kind of ignore these other ones down here. So if you want full credit, make sure that you do all the sentences and then also list your source underneath the paragraph. You might have 1 source, you might have 2 sources, you're going to need 2 citations. So it's up to you whether you use the same source or different ones. You know your hook is just trying to grab the person and get them to read your paper. The topic sentence introduces the actual topic that you're talking about. Then your concrete detail is where you're going to put your first in-text citation with 2 commentary sentences, which are opinions based on fact, whatever this fact is. Then the next one is the same thing. Another detail with in-text citation, and then 2 more sentences talking about this fact, and then your conclusion. So looking at this right here, the hook that they give you, have you ever wondered how some people manage to save thousands of dollars each year and you barely save enough by the end of the month? And then the topic sentence, I've done the research and found a solution to the common problem. It's easy to save money at each meal. So this is introducing your topic. Now up here it says, according to the article, 1001 ways to make $1,000, bringing a bag lunch instead of eating out can save you $1,200 a year. Because they didn't put this in quotes, we can assume this is paraphrased, that they didn't actually use the exact words, they're just using ideas. But you can see that this is not the author's last name. And the reason is because there's no author in the citation. They might not have had an author on that website. So because this is the first thing that appears, this is what you're going to put in your citation. They give you 2 commentary sentences talking about how they feel about this idea of bringing a bag lunch, and then they give you another concrete detail. This concrete detail gives you what we're assuming is a paraphrased item here, and then they're citing it at the end because they didn't include it in the intro. And then they're giving you another thing that is quoted with another parenthetical citation. 2 more commentary sentences talking about this, and then the concluding sentence with the citation at the very bottom. Okay, so I know I gave you guys a lot of information. I know I talked about 3 assignments too, but I thought we had enough time. Since, you know, technically we have up to an hour here, I wanted to make sure that we had enough time to talk about all those things. But if anybody has any questions about any of the stuff we've talked about today, any assignments you have for English in general, or really anything about Graduation Alliance, I'd try to help you with if you have any questions. So if you do, you can type them. You can unmute yourself at this point if you want to and ask a question verbally if that's easier instead of having to type it all out. Whatever works. If not, my contact info is here again too, so you can write that down if you want to, or always, you know, if I'm your teacher, then you probably have all my stuff. You want like the whole like what the PowerPoint presentation you mean, Miranda? It's just a Google Slides document, but I can share it with you if you want. Tyler, are you asking like when this specific assignment is due? No problem, Miranda. Tyler, if you are looking at like when when these 3 assignments are due, it would really be different for everybody because everybody starts their classes kind of at different parts of the month. And so it would be, if you're in this class right now, right, Tyler? Let me go back. I know you told me. Yeah, you are. Okay. So if you go into your grade, like the class sheet, it should show you on the right side of the screen, like what the due date is for those assignments. So you'd be able to see. They are unit 1 and 2, so they're probably pretty early on. So you are probably going to see them due within the first 2 weeks of the class, is my guess. No problem. All right, anybody else have any other questions? If they do, I'm more than I'll hang around for a second just in case anybody else does have questions. If not, that's really all I have tonight. So you're more than welcome to pop out. Totally understand, Miranda. I know it was kind of fast. I didn't want to go too slow because I didn't want you guys to be bored, but I understand wanting to be able to take notes too. So yeah, I'll send you the Prezi. It has all the links to everything. So that should hopefully be pretty, that'll make it a little easier for you. All right, good evening. You're welcome. Thank you guys for coming and participating. I appreciate it.